Well, let's get into the Reds first of all, Skinny. They are 2-4 since we last spoke. They're now 35, 39, and 39 overall, and they've fallen to last place in the NL Central, 9 games back of the first place Brewers, and only a game and a half behind the second place Cardinals. One of the things that I wanted to get into today, because it seems like it comes up multiple times every year with the fan base, and mostly we ignore it because it's silly, but that's the conversation of David Bell. And a lot of people are getting frustrated again as the team's hitting another backslide, and they want to talk about firing David Bell. We did get a question from one of our listeners that said, this was for Ask Skinny Anything, but we'll address it now. He said, can you think of 2 or 3 reasons to keep David Bell? I've supported keeping him until now because I can't see any value he brings to the team. I have supported keeping him until now, but I can't see any value he brings to the team. He coaches by the book, and almost every manager is a player's manager. I don't blame him for physical errors, but the mental errors on the base and in the field, I do blame him some. Isn't it time for a new voice? I read that, and then I didn't have it really included in here. I was just going to throw it down to Ask Anything. And then I get on Facebook, and I see Lance McAllister's page this morning, and his first post this morning was a post about David Bell. He said, what if I've been wrong about David Bell? And he proceeded to ask questions like, what if what's wrong with this last place team is the manager? And what if change in voice and leadership is exactly what this team needs? So Skinny, I'll ask you, has your opinion on David Bell changed at all? Are you getting to the point where you think it might be time for a change?
Yeah, I mean, I've never thought highly of him as a manager. I don't think he moves the needle one way or the other a whole lot, in my opinion. I mean, we can pick apart, pitching changes, the Lucas Sims move on Sunday instead of Fernando Cruz. Sure, that's certainly worth picking apart on because he did something out of the ordinary. I mean, he brought a reliever in at a time where he usually brought a different reliever in, and it cost him dearly. Guy hit a 3-run home run that changed the game around. So yeah, individual moves like that, sure, throughout the course of the season. The voice part, maybe. Maybe the only thing I would say to that is if my choice is right now on a daily basis to write on the lineup card in the outfield, and this is when TJ Friedel's out because seems like he's always hurt. If my choices are on a daily basis, Will Benson, Stuart Fairchild, Jacob Hurtubise, Jake Fraley, I don't care how you shuffle the deck on those. That's not on David Bell. That's on upper management to get him better players.
Yeah, my question with this is always, I'm not against firing David Bell and moving on from him. As you said, he does nothing for me in terms of moving the needle. I don't think he's the reason the team made its run last year and improved by 20 games in terms of their overall record. I don't think he's the reason that they're going to get to a playoff when they finally do. But my question is, if you get rid of David Bell, are you bringing in a player manager like Pete Rose, who's going to be a right-handed bat in the middle of your order? Because that's the real issue with this team. It's not David Bell's decisions. It's the fact that the talent isn't good enough. And quite honestly, we got really excited last year about some guys that some of them aren't available because they're hurt, but some of them we thought too highly of based on a very small sample size. And I think that's what we're really running into this year as much as anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's completely it. They had high hopes for Noelvi Marte, who was yet to play. They had high hopes for Christian Encarnacion Strand, who played hurt and didn't play very well. And so I understand all those decisions that was going to be the core moving forward and still might be, and no Matt McLain. But at the point you're at now, it's not just those guys being out of the lineup. It's really what you've got, to be honest with you, in the outfield. They just don't hit as a group at all. And how much longer do you keep going? He's going to hit. He's going to hit. When did Will Benson ever hit other than a couple of months last year at the big league level? I mean, it hasn't happened. Stuart Fairchild is what he is as a hitter. It's not going to change. So you're hoping for change. There's nothing to hope for because there's no hope there. Go out and get a legit bat. And that's the thing, Rick. Because of how jumbled this wild card race is, you're not very far out of this, but you can't just keep spinning your tires hoping something happens differently with guys who probably aren't capable of doing anything differently.
It doesn't really matter what stat you look at right now. The Reds have a top 10-ish pitching staff, 10 to 15-ish pitching staff, and a bottom 5-ish offense. I mean, that's the reality of the situation. That's what we're dealing with right now. And it's just a simple lack of talent, especially as it relates to power in the middle of the order, especially on the right-handed side, from the right-handed side of the plate. I don't know that any manager is going to be able to fix that problem. I don't know. Maybe you can look at the GM situation. I think we've talked a lot about the good things Nick Krall has done in his time here, but you got to get better players. And I'm not saying that's all on him. He didn't know how all this was going to shake down. He didn't know the injuries that were going to happen. He didn't know about Noelvi Marte's suspension. But to me, this is more about putting the right pieces together in place on this roster around the guys like Hunter Green and Ellie De La Cruz and Nick Lodolo and some of the cornerstone pieces that you have for the future than it is finding the right voice in the locker room.
Yeah, no, again, David Bell, like I'll use Wednesday's game as an example. You got to give your catcher a day off. So Luke Maley hits. Luke Maley's not a good hitter. I like Luke Maley. He's just not a good hitter, and the numbers are proof in the pudding. Santiago Espinal is not a good hitter, but they're trying to get another right-handed bat in the lineup. And then again, your choices in the outfield are Hurtubise, Fraley. Yeah, we can argue, should Jake Fraley be hitting fourth when he's only got one home run? Oh, fine. Put him wherever else you want to. It doesn't change the fact they got 2 hits yesterday. Because if you look at that lineup looks like it's probably a 2-hit lineup. It's just not very good.
Yeah, the one thing the last thing I would say about the David Bell argument and conversation that's constantly going on in the city is I don't understand, especially some of the media members, and I think Lance would admit that he's been a guy who's been defending him strongly year after year here. I don't really understand the people who defend him so strongly. I don't really get what there is to defend. He hasn't produced anything during his time here. The team hasn't gotten noticeably better. Yes, they had their nice second half of the season last year, but they didn't even make the playoffs in an expanded field. That doesn't really amount to anything, in my opinion, in terms of speaking to him being a quality manager. So I have no reason to see defending David Bell vehemently against fans who want him fired, but I'm also not going to be the one out there railing for him to get fired right now because I really don't think that's going to change much.
And so many managers are so heavy into analytics that is literally by the book. And again, I'm not opposed to it. You're stupid if you don't use all resources at hand when you're coaching or managing. I certainly understand all of that. But there's still this game is not robotic, and some of it has to be by feel. And I think that's kind of where the frustration lies. Is you can make a case either for or against, and a lot of people can point to analytics of, hey, he's just playing this guy because that's what the numbers say. Well, maybe sometimes you got to go against the numbers and buck that idea. And again, it doesn't mean you go totally the other way on some of this stuff, but I think that's the problem because whoever else you would bring in. Yeah, is it a stronger voice? Maybe. Is it a guy who's going to challenge players? Maybe. Is it a guy who's going to be more fiery, which everybody loves the fiery guy, right? Is it going to be somebody who's more fiery? Maybe. But at the end of the day, that guy probably in today's baseball is going to look at the numbers and go, here's why I'm playing this guy on this day in this part of the lineup.
Yeah, and quite honestly, that's why, from my perspective, I'm only speaking for myself, I think baseball has become less entertaining and less fun for me to talk about because it really is. You just have to find the number, find whatever statistic you're looking for, and go, it says to do this in this moment. And that's everybody just accepts that as fact in baseball for the most part. And it's kind of like the only way of doing things. And from a managerial perspective, it makes me feel like almost anyone could do that job for any team. It really doesn't matter who you have in that position.
Exactly. And yeah, you can argue again, the voice maybe matters. But this isn't like a clubhouse of goof nuts that are running amok. That's the part where you need a strong voice. If you got a bunch of clowns who are showing up late and not doing their work, and it doesn't seem to be that. It seems like these guys go about their business the way they're supposed to go about their business. And I think David Bell treats them the way that he thinks they should be treated. And that's been kind of the dawn of time, right? Baseball's been probably more guilty of it than any other sport of you had too strong-willed of a manager, and boy, he just lost the clubhouse, need a players manager. And then the players manager comes in and it's good for a little while. And then suddenly guys are running him like, need a stern disciplinarian in there. And so there's never a happy medium with any of that stuff. But I do think, to your point, Rick, I think we've gotten so bogged down by the numbers that it feels like anybody, to your point, could do the job just going by the numbers in the book. And sometimes you got to toss that out the window.
Let's switch gears here a little bit. Stay on the Reds topic. Hunter Green became the first Reds pitcher ever to collect 400 strikeouts in his first 59 career games and extended his franchise best streak for most starts with at least 5+ strikeouts to begin the season at 15 games after another brilliant start on Wednesday. Just 2 weeks ago, Ellie De La Cruz made history by becoming the only player since 1900 to record over 65 stolen bases and over 50 extra base hits within 1 year of his Major League Baseball debut. It feels like every few weeks there's another stat like that popping up about Ellie. We always post about local12.com. Ellie De La Cruz sets franchise record or what have you. Skinny, which player are you more confident in going forward as we sit here now with Ellie De La Cruz being 22 years old and Hunter Green being 24 years old?
I had to sit back on that one because that's a great question. I'm going Ellie just because at some point I think you're going to find a more consistent Ellie De La Cruz. And when you do, some of these numbers are going to be eye-popping in the power and speed department. He's not there yet. We haven't seen him there yet. But I'm really bullish on Hunter Green. And this is from a guy who back in April was suggesting that if things don't go well soon, maybe he is nothing more than a closer. And we're always, the strikeout is always going to be a narrative with Hunter Green, right? Because it's what he does. And you just pointed out a strikeout stat. But, it's not as much about the strikeout with him anymore. It's him getting people out. And even on days when he maybe doesn't have his best stuff, fighting his way through that and giving you a good enough start to win the game. And that's not coming every once in a while. That's now coming, it feels like, every single solitary start. And yeah, there's going to be a bump. Clayton Kershaw hits a bump, right? He hits a bump in the playoffs mostly, but there's going to be a bump. And that's fine as long as it's a bump and he's right back on it. And I think that's going to be the case with Hunter Green. I think Hunter Green's the guy who, honestly, at this stage, I could say, I think I know what I can expect. And there's a little bit more in his tank, right? Of being a little bit more pitch efficient, going a little bit deeper into games. There's that. But the consistency is starting to come. And it's just not there yet with Ellie. And maybe it never comes. Maybe we just have to ride these 2 or 3 week hot streaks and realize a slump's coming around the bend. I brought this up the other day when I hosted Mo Egger's show on 1530. For me, I'd love to see Ellie bunt more when he's in a rut. He's so fast. He doesn't even have to get a perfect bunt down, Rick, to get a hit. And I think sometimes the psychology of, your batting average. I mean, I think when we all played in high school, not all, whatever, it felt like I know I could compute my average in my head when I got a hit or not. And sometimes, you have a smaller sample size. You don't play as many games, but you're like, okay, that hit got me to 368. And then you make a couple extra, like, daggone, I'm down to 3. Oh, daggone, I'm down to 290. And I think it's psychological with major league players too. I mean, Ellie sees the scoreboard. He can see the numbers at 228 at one point. Now he had a hot streak over the weekend and early in the week that got him back to the 242, 240-ish range. But I think when he hits a run, I'd love to see him do some more of that. Because I think he's a walking double, right? I mean, it's not just a bunt single; it's a bunt double, in my opinion. I think that again, he doesn't have to do it all the time. I'm not asking him to do it with guys on base, leading off an inning every once in a while. 1 out, nobody on. To me, that's a walking double, and I think more of that. You'll see the average go higher. Maybe we'll never see that, but. That's a great question. I'm going to go again. I'm going to probably be more bullish on Ellie because I think he's a Hall of Famer in the making. I'm not sure Hunter's that guy. I think Hunter's top of the rotation kind of guy. So I'll go Ellie, but man, I think we're going to see Hunter Green, as long as he's healthy, just be a consistent top of the rotation pitcher. He's certainly trending in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the question here is, Ellie still clearly has the crazy upside. It's still there for him to be the best player in baseball potentially down the line if he continues to develop, but the consistency hasn't taken over yet. He's not quite there in terms of turning that corner just yet. With Hunter Green, it feels like he actually has started to turn that corner of consistency a little bit here this year. Now, maybe 2 months from now, we'll be singing a different tune because this is still a small sample size, but as of late, and we're going through 15 starts now, he's been very good this year and for an extended period here, and he's been lasting in games longer. He has been more efficient. He's never going to be super efficient because of all the strikeouts that he gets, but he has been more efficient and we have seen improvement. So it's more about the finished product Hunter Green. And again, there's still some upside there. He can still get better and he can be one of the best pitchers in the game, I think, versus Ellie De La Cruz, who could maybe be one of the best players we've ever seen, but just isn't quite there yet in terms of turning that corner in consistency and being a finished product.
I mean, I could foresee a day, it's maybe not going to be next year. Ellie could be at one point in his career a 40-80 guy, maybe even a 50-50 guy or 50-80, however you want to go the number. I mean, the numbers for power and speed have a chance to be ridiculous one day when he makes more consistent contact. And maybe it never comes. Maybe it just doesn't. But I do think that's it. I mean, again, if he got you, could you imagine if he got you 25 bunt hits a year? And again, I'm not asking him to do it a lot. I'm just asking him to do it if he's in a week where he's seeing the ball well and hitting it well, he doesn't have to do it then. But when he's in a rut, and we see those ruts, right? I mean, it's a 18 at bat streak where he's striking out 11 or 12 times. And maybe that changes moving forward. But if he's in that rut, I mean, it's a walking double.
I'm not against that entirely, but it is different. Like usually when we've had this conversation with guys in the past, we're talking about guys who are not powerful hitters, guys who you're not taking a major bat out of your hitter's hands when you're asking him to bunt. It's like, this guy should bunt more often. He's not hitting the ball hard and he's fast. He can use his speed. With Ellie, yes, he's fast, but you are taking probably your most dangerous bat in your entire lineup out of your hitter's hands if you're asking him to bunt, even if he's in a slump. So I get where you're coming from on that to some extent, but I also see the reluctance there on that side.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting take the bat out of his hands when people are on base. And I know, yeah, it's a potential home run, but you know what he's more likely to do? He's 8 times more likely to strike out than he is to hit a home run. I mean, that's just the facts. Go do the math on it. I mean, he's got, 12 home runs and over 100 strikeouts. That's 8 times the strikeouts to home runs. So the potentiality of him is far greater to strike out than it is to hit a home run. So to me, again, I'm not asking him to do it a lot, Rick. I'm just asking when he's in a rut. And we all see that rut. We know when that rut's coming because it looks ugly, right? Just even for the psychological standpoint of, hey, listen, when I'm in a rut betting the horses, and I don't bet them like I used to just go make a show bet just so I could go up the window and go, I cashed a bet. I've changed the karma of it.
Gotta see one go down. That's right.
Yeah. It's a $2 bet that got me back $2.20. In theory, it's the dumbest damn thing ever, but I changed the psychology of the moment. I'm now a winner again. And so, again, I'm not asking him to do it a lot. I'm just asking him to do it more because, again, it's not just him with a bunt single, in my opinion. I mean, he's on second base a lot of those times as well because of a stolen base. And literally, you could put that down as a double, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, like I said, I don't think that's invalid. I'm not even against it. They know those numbers more than I do. Like we said, they're all into analytics. And with Elly, I get it more so than other guys in the past. Normally, when we're having this conversation, it's just like, please just lay down the bunt. You're not doing anything anyways. With Elly, at least there is the extreme upside of what he can do with the bat. So to go back to the original question, it sounded like you were leaning towards Elly there in your answer. Yes. And I would agree with that, but I think we'll have a much stronger opinion on this by the end of this year because it kind of feels like this is a really big year for both of those guys. They're both going pretty well. Hunter Green has had a great start to the season. Elly has been a little up and down, but it feels like he's starting to level off the downslides. They're not going for as long or as steep. So hopefully he can continue that as we look forward to the end of the season. Any other thoughts on this topic or the Reds, Skinny?
No, but I guess I'll flip one more on you, and we're not quite there yet. We'll probably have this conversation more. The Reds are probably only going to get one All-Star game representative, right? Just the way it's so hard because every team has to be represented. Who gets it right now? If you had to do it right now today, who would that rep be? I know.
I mean, are we only talking position players?
No, it could be a pitcher.
I mean, because, God, like Green and Lodolo might be in that conversation right now.
I think Lodolo is trending more in that conversation.
I think it might be Lodolo. And by the way, Lodolo is not a bad person to throw in this last question we just asked. Like, no. Are you more excited about his potential than either of these other two guys? That might be a possibility.
I've been excited by him from Jump Street just because the college background for him and just the stuff he's got as a lefty. Maybe lefties always look prettier. I don't know why. They just look different, man. But he's really, really good. And when you look at all that, Elly's helped by Mookie Betts' injury a little bit, but there are a bunch of shortstops kind of in the mix. I thought he'd get a little more of the fan vote, and maybe he gets more of the player vote when it comes to it. I don't know. I doubt he's going to get to the point of being started in. It seems like there's a big push for Trey Turner in that regard now that Mookie Betts is hurt. So maybe he gets the nod. So yeah, I'm leaning more and more to Lodolo being that rep.
Yeah, I think it will be Lodolo, but I'm surprised Elly wasn't the super popular choice among fans. I thought young fans would totally vote him in.
I did too. I thought Betts first, but then Betts gets hurt, obviously. And I thought, okay, if Elly's second, he's going to end up being the starter. And instead he was fourth. And, maybe there's another wave of votes. We'll know this coming Monday when the next vote's released. But it took me by surprise a little bit. I thought he'd be in that mix.
Yeah, I did too.
Sure, you could stop watching now, but let's be honest, you want to see more. So click some of those links, or better yet, go ahead and tap subscribe. That way you'll catch more content from Local 12.